So welcome everybody who's watching. I'm Barak, Hullman, and my friend JJ is here. Somebody's in the room next door. And we're sitting here in Jerusalem. And just for anybody who wants to see, I'm wearing a kippah, so you don't think I'm an apikoros. Chas v'shalom. And I'm going to be telling you some stories tonight, the Chaim. We just finished a class in the Kutei Moran. Over here with the Ote Or. And so before I start the stories, my wife said to me, you got to tell people why stories are important. Why do you tell stories at all? Stories are not Torah. So there was somebody, it's perfect for you, JJ, somebody who came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, I'm a melamed, I'm a teacher, and I teach Jewish children in Cheder. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe says to him, and do you tell stories? And he says, no, it's Bittul Torah. It's a waste of time. My focus is to focus on Torah, not on telling stories. And the Rebbe looked at him very seriously and he said, stories are Torah. Stories are Torah. So for anybody who thinks that stories, I should be learning Gemara, I should be learning something more seriously, stories are Torah. And what does that mean, the stories are Torah? It means that stories can, Zahava's watching, Shalom Aleichem. That stories can bring you to a place that halacha and learning can't. And that's why the stories are so special. So I'll share with you a few stories tonight. We'll see how much time it takes to tell each story. I've got a whole list here. I'll just keep going until we finish. So the first story is one of my favorites, the Belzer Rebbe. It's the night of Slichot. And the Belzer Rebbe, the first Belzer Rebbe, everybody's waiting for him to come to shul. All the Chassidim are there, and the Rebbe is not showing up. And the Gabbai comes to the Rebbe, he comes to his room, and he says, Rebbe, the Chassidim are waiting for you, where are you? And the Rebbe says, hitch up the wagon, we're going for a ride. And the Gabbai says, now? Everybody's waiting for the Rebbe. He says, hitch up the wagon, we're going for a ride. They go for a ride, they go all the way to the end of town, down this dirt path, a little bit into the woods, like way, way out of town. And from a distance, they get off the wagon, they start walking, and you can see in the distance, there's this rundown shack. And there's like a little farm in front, where there used to be some animals, they're not there anymore. And there's a little candle lit, and a little round table. And the Rebbe and the Gabbai stand at a distance and look through the window. In the window, they see this old Jew. And the old Jew is sitting there. I've got a bottle here. So he had a bottle of vodka, and he had a cup. And he takes the vodka, and he pours some vodka in the cup. And he puts it on the other side of the table. And then he pours himself some vodka, puts it on his side of the table. And he looks over and he says, Chaim, Chaim. Then he goes over to the other side of the table and he drinks the vodka and says, L'chaim. And then he gets up and starts dancing. Just by himself, he's dancing, 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 dancing. And then the Rebbe says to the Gabbai, okay, let's go to Slichot. So they go to Slichot, and of course the Rebbe arrives and everyone parts the way, and everybody hushes as the Rebbe comes through to the front of the shul. I don't know if the Rebbe was the Chazan or not, but the davening starts. And at the end of Slichot, the Rebbe tells the Gabbai, his assistant, go to the old man that we saw in the hut and tell him the Rebbe wants to see him. So the Gabbai goes to the old man, whose name was Zelig, and he says, listen, Zelig, the Rebbe wants to see you. And Zelig says, what? Why does the Rebbe want to see me? He's like, I don't ask questions. I'm the Gabbai here. The Rebbe wants to see you, and the Rebbe wants to see you. Let's go. Get up. We're going to the Rebbe. He's like, but can you give me a hint? You know why? What did I do? Why? The Rebbe never paid any attention to me before. He's like, let's go to the office. So they go to the Rebbe's room. I guess it wasn't really an office. They go to the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe is standing, and so Zelig is standing. And the Rebbe says to Zelig, please sit down. And Zelig doesn't want to sit down, so the Rebbe sits down out of respect. So the Rebbe sits down, Zelig sits down, sitting at the table. And the Rebbe says to Zelig, tell me, Zelig, what were you doing in your hut, pouring vodka and drinking and dancing? What was all that about? And Zelig says, the Rebbe has such holy vision. How did the Rebbe see such a thing? He says, it's not important whether the Rebbe can see or not. I just want to know, what were you doing? He said, but I don't understand. How did you know what I was doing? He said, it's really simple. You see my Gabbai here? He hitched up the wagon. We went to your house. We stood outside. We saw you pouring the cups. We saw you say l'chaim. We saw you dancing. Now, what was it for? What were you doing? He said, oh, but you see, the Rebbe is such a great tzaddik. He even knew when to come and this. It's like, forget it. Just tell me what happened. He said, all right, I'll tell you. He said, my wife died many years ago. My children, grown up, moved away. I'm an old man living by myself in this house. I have a little goat, and I have some chickens. And that's how I made a living. I would milk the goat. I would sell the eggs. And I had a little bit of food to eat, and I made a little bit of money. So one day the goat gets sick. And I've been a farmer a long time. I know when goats are going to die. And this goat was going to die. And I said to Hashem, listen, Hashem, I've got nothing in this world. And if you take that goat from me, you and I are going to have a big problem. The next day the goat was even more sick, or sicker. I don't remember which one you say. Living in Israel for 30 years, you forget English. The goat was worse off, and he says, Hashem, this goat dies, I'm telling you, I'm going to stop keeping Shabbos. You and I are done. The goat dies, and Zelig stops keeping Shabbos. It wasn't easy for him to not keep Shabbos, but he made a promise to Hashem he's not going to keep Shabbos. Then the chickens got sick, and Zelig says, listen, Hashem, you took my goat away. You're taking the chickens away. You leave me without the chickens, I have nothing. You take the chickens away, I'm not going to keep kosher. I'm not going to put on tefillin. You and I are done. That's it. The chickens die, and Zelig stops keeping kosher, stops putting on tefillin. This went on for maybe a week, and now it's time for slichot. The time will come and we ask Hashem for forgiveness, to reconnect with Hashem. And Zelig says to the Rebbe, you know, years ago, Shmuel, the butcher, and I, we got into a fight, and we couldn't stand each other. Before Rosh Hashanah, Shmuel, he comes to me and he says, listen, Zelig, you and I, we can't be enemies. We Jews have enough enemies. He pours me a vodka, pours himself a l'chaim. He says, let's say l'chaim. We drink a l'chaim. We drink a few more l'chaims. Before I knew it, we had made up. I mean, I never thought Shmuel, I would ever speak with him again. And here we're hugging each other and we're dancing. So I said, okay, that's what I have to do for Hashem. Hashem and I were enemies now. And how long can you stay enemies with Hashem? So I poured him a l'chaim, I poured myself a l'chaim. I saw Hashem wasn't drinking his l'chaim, so I drank his, I drank mine. And then I felt like we made up, and I danced, and I came to shul. So the Rebbe says to Zelig, Zelig, you should know that there was a terrible decree on this community. The terrible things are going to happen to us, and I could see it with my holy vision. And I've been davening for months to try to avert it. And I've asked people to say Tehillim and daven. and nothing made a difference. But your making up with Hashem opened the gates of heaven so that everyone's prayers in this shul could reach the heavens and avert that decree. And it's only thanks to you that we've all been saved. Good story, right? All right, we'll play a nigun in between each story. This is a short one. Okay, so another story by Yud Lamed Peretz, who was one of the great Yiddish writers, and actually kind of a heretic. He grew up religious, but wasn't so religious, and wrote a story that some people say was a sarcastic Chassidic story, but it came out to be such a sweet story. You know, Rabbi Nachman talks about finding the good points in everything. We were just learning tonight, we were learning from lesson 64 in the Likutei Moharan and Torah 64, Samech Daled, that even in apikorsut and even in heretical thoughts, you can find kedusha, you can find holiness. So whether the story was meant to be an inspirational story or not, that's how I found it, and that's how I tell it. So there was once a misnagid, and everybody probably knows that at a certain period when the Baal Shem Tov came around and his followers were spreading their ideas of serving Hashem through joy and not just pure intellectual understanding of the Torah, it was considered heretical. And there was a big clash between the Chassidim and the Misnagdim. The Misnagdim, who gave themselves the title Misnagdim, which means opposers, were very opposed to the Chassidim. And one day, there's a Misnagid that comes to the court. That's what they would call the Chatzer, is what they call it in Hebrew, the court of a Rebbe, like where the Rebbe was and where his Chassidim were, and his house and Shiva. And he came to the court of the Nimanova Rebbe, which is in Ukraine. And it's the time of Slichot, and it's already after the first night, so it's the second day of saying Slichot. And the Rebbe's not there. And the Masnagid is asking questions. He says, where is your Rebbe? And the Chassidim say, oh, our Rebbe, in the time of Slichot, of Slichas, our Rebbe's in heaven. He goes to heaven, straight to heaven. That's where our Rebbe is. So this guy, being a Masnagid and an opposer and not interested in this crazy Chassidic stuff, he says, I don't believe it. So he knows where the Rebbe lives. Everybody knows where the Rebbe lives. So he says, no problem. I'm going to watch the Rebbe. From the moment the Rebbe leaves his house, and in some versions of the story, he sleeps under the bed. Whether he slept under the bed or not, he watches the Rebbe. In the morning, the Rebbe gets up. Instead of putting on his Rebbe clothes, he puts on a lumberjack's, like a peasant's outfit. Big leather boots, and like rough clothes, and takes an axe and some rope and puts on a hat and walks out of his house. And the Misnagid follows at a distance, and he sees the Rebbe going into the woods, chopping some dead wood, putting it into a pile, wrapping it up with the rope, throwing it over his shoulder, and heading back into town. And he goes to the town of an old Jewish woman. Now, this time of year, here in Jerusalem, Baruch Hashem, the summer is finally over, the summer heat waves. Finally over, for me at least, I like to sweat, so I'm not sweating now. But in Ukraine, it's getting really cold. And this time of year, it can be almost snowing, sometimes, some years. And so this woman was in her house, this old woman, sitting in a bed, laying in a bed, and she's freezing because she doesn't have any money. And the Rebbe comes and knocks on the door. Here's my sound effects without knocking over the phone. The Rebbe comes and knocks on the door. And the old woman says, "Who is it?" And he says, "It's Vlad." And she says, "Vlad, what are you doing here?" He says, "I came, I brought wood for you." She said, "No, didn't I tell you last time I don't have any money, I can't afford your wood?" "Sir, don't worry about that, you'll pay me back another time." She said, "Vlad, get out of here, I don't want you coming in here." He says, "I'm coming in." He pushes the door open. She's an old lady, she can't get out of bed. She says, "Vlad, what are you doing? I told you I can't afford your wood." He says, it's cold in here, and you need a fire." He takes the wood, he puts it in the fireplace, he lights a fire, and she says to him, "Vlad, what am I going to do? I already owe you money. I can't pay you." Vlad says to her, "You're a Jew, right?" She says, "Yeah." He said, "Don't you have a God?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "So pray to your God that he'll send you the money. That's all you have to do. Pray to your God to ask for the money. And then you can pay me when you have it. And you don't have to wait for me. You can give it to, what do you call it, tzedakah? You give it to tzedakah whenever you have the money." She says, "Okay, Vlad, okay." And he goes and he stokes the fire. When the fire is really hot, she hadn't been able to sleep for weeks because she was so cold. She falls asleep, covers her with the blanket. Then he takes out this little book of slichot. He starts davening next to the fireplace. The whole time, the misnagid is watching this from a distance. And it makes such a deep impression on the misnagid that he becomes a chassid of the Nimanova Rebbe. And the next year, Slichas comes, and somebody says to the Chassidim, "Where's our Rebbe?" "Oh, our Rebbe's in heaven." And this misnagid, who's now one of the Chassidim, he says, "Our Rebbe's in heaven? You think our Rebbe's in heaven? Our Rebbe is in a place even higher than heaven, if not higher than heaven." That's how high the Rebbe went. Because the Alexander Rebbe was once asked, if the Baal Shem Tov said that we can learn something good from everything that we see in the world, what can you learn good from an atheist? Because in those days, that was the beginning of people, the Enlightenment and the Emancipation. These were the big revolutionary moments in Jewish history, and that's when people began being atheists. Before that, everybody believed in God. Everyone was religious. So they said to the Alexander Rebbe, what can you learn from an atheist? He said, "I can learn one good thing from an atheist. When an atheist sees something is wrong, he doesn't ask Hashem to help. He goes and he takes care of it himself." He said, we can learn that as well. We ask Hashem to help, but then we behave like an atheist and go take care of it ourselves. And that was what the Rebbe saw. The Nimanova Rebbe, he saw that this woman needed help, and he went and he took care of it himself. So I'm watching the time here. We have like another 10 minutes, and I want to play a nigun at the end, so I'll just continue with a few more stories. This is a really important story. For anybody who's watching, listen to the story, and Be'ezrat Hashem, if you need to go back and listen to it again, you can listen, by the way, to my stories on the Chassidic Story Project. If you just go to anywhere you listen to podcasts and type in Chassidic Story or my name, Barak Hullman, you'll see it shows up number one. It's like the number one, I don't know how many Chassidic Story podcasts there are out there, but it's the number one Chassidic Story podcast. So you'll find some of these stories on the podcast. So Reb Leibele Eger, who was a grandson of Rabbi Akiva Eger, who was one of the big Misnagid rabbis, one of the big Litvak rabbis in Eastern Europe, he decided to become a chassid of the Kotzker Rebbe. Kotzk was a very strange Chassidic group. The Kotzker demanded truth from his Chassidim, to always be probing yourself and always be asking yourself, am I doing this in the most honest, sincere way? That was the Kotzk way. And the Kotzker Chassidim were also a little harsh. So it's the night of Yom Kippur. Davening is over, and a lot of the Chassidim are just sleeping on the benches in the shul. And Leibele, who was a young boy, a teenager, he's also sleeping on a bench. And he hears two guys say to one another, hey, Beryl, go get the wine. We got to make kiddush. And his friend Chaim, he says, what do you mean we got to make kiddush? He says, it's Yom Tov, right? He says, yeah, but it's Yom Kippur. He says, it's Yom Tov. We have to make kiddush on Yom Tov. He's like, all right, we got to make kiddush on Yom Tov. So he goes and gets a bottle of wine. He brings a kiddush cup, and he pours the wine for his friend. And Leibele, he wakes up. He hears what's going on. And he says, what's going on here? And the two guys, they say, we're making kiddush. It's Yom Tov. He says, you can't make kiddush. It's Yom Kippur. You can't eat or drink on Yom Kippur. They said, oh, really? Says who? He says, what do you mean? Everybody knows that. Like, everybody knows that. Come on, let's go. So Vimanan, he's about to start making kiddush. And Leibele says, wait, stop! So Beryl says, what? What now? He says, you can't drink, you can't make kiddush. Why not? Because it says so in the Torah. He says, oh, it says so in the Torah. Very nice. So Vimanan, he's like, stop, you can't make kiddush. What now? You're really bothering us, kid. You can't make kiddush. Why can't you make kiddush? It says so in the Shulchan Aruch. It says so in the book of law and the halacha. I'm like, oh, very nice. It says so in the Shulchan Aruch. It's Yom Tov, we're making kiddush, let's go. Savima Anand, like, stop! You can't make kiddush. I'm not making kiddush on Yom Kippur, I just need to drink. Why can't we make kiddush? No, stop bothering us already. Who says so? So Leibele says, Hashem says so. They said, oh, if Hashem says so, let's down the kiddush cup. Then we won't make kiddush on Yom Kippur. He said, you see, it's not enough that everybody knows. It's not enough that the Torah says so. It's not enough that it's written in the Shulchan Aruch. You have to know that the mitzvot that we're doing is because Hashem said so. And to always remember that. So there's a story, I've got 5 more minutes. There's a story, and I guess I'm going to probably, this and one more story, and then we're going to end. So there was a king, and on his birthday every year, he would release all the prisoners in his jails. And they were released in one or two ways. Either they were set free, or they were hanged. Both a type of freedom. As far as the king was concerned, he didn't care. So the way it worked is that the king would decide, just however, based on his gut, this one would live, this one would die. Unfortunately, in modern Jewish history, we've seen that in the Holocaust, so we know that's happened. And there was a prisoner who, the day of the king's birthday, was dancing in his cell, practically jumping off the walls, dancing around, joyous. And the guard comes over and he says, what, are you crazy? I said, what do you mean, what am I crazy? It's the king's birthday. The king's letting all the prisoners go. He said, yeah, but you don't know which way you're going to go. You might be let go, or you might be hanged. You could die today. What are you so happy for? He said, it doesn't matter if I live or die. He said, today I get to see the king. I've never seen the king my whole life. Today I get to go in front of the king. And so he's brought in front of the king, and he's so happy. And the king looks at the guard and he says, what's with this guy? He says, he was dancing in his cell for hours. And I asked him, why are you so happy? And he said, because today I get to see the king. He said, if that's the case, let him go free. We come into Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We say the prayers. They're the days of awe. But remember that Avinu Malkeinu, when we say Avinu Malkeinu, the king is our father. And our father wants us to rejoice. And our father wants us to be connected to him. So the last story before I play a nigun, checking the time here. Can't even see. Can't see with these glasses, can't see without them. Over there. So what is it, 9:25? Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. We'll finish with this. So the great Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, who was so well known for finding the good in everything and everyone. And one time, Reb Levi Yitzchak and his Gabbai are walking to shul the night of Slichot, and it starts to rain. and they go into an abandoned house just to get out of the rain. And Reb Levi Yitzchak says to the Gabbai, why don't you go inside and make sure everything's safe in there? So the Gabbai goes in, and he sees that it's a thieves' den. All the thieves of Berdichev are there. And they're sitting there, and they're bragging. The first thief says, you know that theft for 5,000 rubles? That was me. I did that. Another one says, oh, you did that. You know that theft for 25,000 rubles? That was me. I did that. Another thief says, yeah, you know the guy that was murdered? I murdered him. I did it. So the Gabbai comes out. He says, Rebbe, I don't think this is the place for us. You should hear what these guys are saying. This one says he stole 5,000. This one stole 25,000. This one, I can't even believe I heard it. He said he admitted to murder. Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, he raises his hands to the heavens. He says, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, the thieves of Berdichev are admitting all their transgressions, and I haven't even gotten to saying Slichot yet. Always finding the good in everyone and everything. So thank you for listening, my sweetest friends. You can listen to more stories. Just look for Chassidic Story Podcast, and we'll play a little nigun to finish off with.
la 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 la